Alright, so we're gonna refactor a plugin. Indie WordPress has a plugin called WordPress Deleted Posts. Hasn't been updated in 4 years. They did a minor update to the README 2 years ago, but there was all they changed was the tested up to value. So we're gonna do some updates. The thing that I see immediately is there's a whole lot of boilerplate here, and I recognize it as like a WordPress boilerplate. You can run grunt to deploy. But let's look at the code. The reason I chose this plugin is it's one file. Essentially, deleted posts.php is the only file involved, and what we can see here is that it's essentially just a single class with two static methods that do basically the same thing. Immediately I can see this init function doesn't even need to be there. There's no reason for this add action to be here, because all we're doing is adding this action, which we can do from the global scope. So we can immediately get rid of that and use this. Once we do that, we don't need a class. We can get rid of the class entirely and use just a straight function. Now, I'm all about object oriented, but this isn't an object. This is a class inside of, or this is a function inside of a class. It's not an object, so we shouldn't treat it like it is. So let's get started. What I'm gonna do is I've already forked it and I've already cloned it. So we have the file local. We can see it's running. It's got Composer. All right, so it has Composer. We have this Docker Compose. I'm actually not sure how to use that one. We'll poke at that probably later. But for now, let's run Composer install and get any dependencies. And we're back. That took a minute. Alright, so there's quite a few dependencies here. I'm assuming these are all just tools. So, yeah, these are all in required dev, I think. Let's take a look. Composer JSON. Alright, so we have PHP unit required, and that appears to be it. PHP and Composer installers. So let's see, does grunt run? No, it doesn't. So there is some weird things going on with this repository. We don't really need all of this crap. Yeah, so it doesn't even install everything that we need. In a perfect world, I would get rid of all of this, but given this isn't my project, we're just going to focus on rewriting, refactoring the deleted post file. Alright, let's open it up in code. Bring that over to the correct screen once it loads. All right. $14,035 pending changes, or 1,435 pending changes. Something tells me, yeah, all of the vendor directory isn't ignored. So let's there we go. All right, so we have we're using npm as well. So, there we are. There's our grunt. So let's run npm install and get everything else that we need. Now can we do it? There we go. And it looks like the only thing that grunt does is runs the readme, which surprises me that they didn't run that before, because they had updated the text file, but they hadn't actually updated the MD. Alrighty. Now that we have all of our dependencies and the readme updated, let's go in and look at our file. Alright, so very first thing that we can do is just move this out here, right? And by doing that, we just get rid of that entirely. Both methods are set up as static functions, right? So we'll just use the one that we actually want. Add action works at any level. It's loaded in, the global scope immediately. If we can use it to, add the init one, then we can use it here to add the template redirect. Next, what we're going to do is change this to a function. So how do we want to do that? Probably just get that out like that. We don't need public or static. Now it's just handle 410. So if you haven't guessed, what this plugin does is it generates a 410 response when you try to load a post that has been deleted. Generally, WordPress generates a 404. This will create a 410. So move that like that, and we may want to change the name. Alright, so what I like to do is name it based on this. So indie WordPress handle 410. That way we know, it's not going to conflict. Alright, WP queries being passed is a global here. Alright, now they're doing well here. I like the early redirect. If it's not a 404, then we don't care about that post at all. We're just going to return. Now, here what you'll notice is let's just close all of these if statements. Right? All these conditionals just need to get closed. And what do we see? Well, what we see is that if we get rid of all of these, all of our conditionals, the only thing on what we would call the happy path is global WP query, which means the function runs off of the non-default path. If this runs, on the happy path, then it would actually have to go into a conditional, right? So what we're going to do is change some of these. So what we can do, how are we going to do this? This comes down to basically, you'd never need an else. If you see an else, that's a code smell. It's almost guaranteed that if you see an else statement, then you can get rid of that else and do things differently. we're going to do here is say if empty WP query page name and empty, and I'll just copy this one. It would help if I actually copied it. There we go. And if that's empty, then we're going to return. There's our else gone. Okay, now we need to find a way to get the happy path here, right? So what is the difference between these two? Well, post status is always trash. The only difference is page name or name. And we run that with this combination. So these queries are identical minus this key and this piece of the value. So what we can do there is say right, and we'll move it to an array here. We'll just start with post status is equal to trash. All right, we're going to focus on that for now. We can get rid of that here, get rid of that there. We can say this code isn't going to stay here. I'm just moving. I'm moving it so that we can start moving towards cleaning up the code. All right. Now we have page name. All right. And what is the default? All right. So WP query. What do we have as the default for page name? This is under the array. So that is our setup options. Your arguments there. I need to find the source right there. All right, so all right. Now we're looking for query. WP parse args. Alright, and this, I assume, just returns those in a ingestible way. So it's not passing it any defaults. So if it doesn't pass it defaults, then there are none, which means that if we pass page name and name, they will appear, and we don't want that. All right, but what that means is here's what we can do. we're going to do it this way because just how WordPress is configured, we want to make them make it as backwards compatible as possible. All right, then we'll do name. And this way, one or both of these will be set, right? So we're going to move this to any arguments. Now we can get rid of that entire thing. And actually, I'm pretty sure we're going to get rid of this too. Reason being, what we're going to do is say array filter, right? Now array filter, if we run that without a callback, anything that returns false is wiped out. See? So any false will be empty. So we can go array filter arguments. If count arguments is equal to 1, then we return. And now we have the same code that we had before, checking for if these are empty, right? But now it's all on the happy path. So we read it, from top to bottom. We say, okay, well, if page name is empty, and in fact, what we'll do now, because this is kind of difficult to read. Now you'll hear me talk a lot about this. I don't like ternary operations. I really don't. I did it here simply because it makes this logic a little smoother, but let's focus right now on making it work, and then we'll make it readable. But we'll come back to these because I'm looking at that right now, and I can tell you I don't like it. All right, now we can say arguments, and we can do this simply because we already know that it's got one of those in it. We may not know which one it is, but frankly, we don't care. We don't need to know exactly which one it is as long as one of these is there, right? Let me just verify that it's not a by reference. So it does return an array. Yeah, returns a filtered array. All right. So if the count is equal to 1, then what we're going to do, how do we want to go about this? Because now we need to add that tag to the end of this. So if we look back at our code, it's got the trashed to the end. So what do we want to do? Feels dirty to loop over it again. What we could do is do this in the filter. Right? So we could pass, do we care about the key? Yeah, that's what we'll do. We'll just do the value. All right. If the value is equal to false, then we'll just return false. If the value is equal to trash, then we'll return the value. And immediately we can see that these are doing the exact same thing, right? So we can do this. Otherwise, we return the value. Oop, dot. Is it 2 or 1? I believe it's 2. Yeah. Boom. All right. So now we don't care which one of these is set. We're either going to remove it or we're going to add the correct ending to it there. Then if neither of them is set, then we're going to return and move on with our day. And we run the query, and here is the next piece. This is also inside of an if. I want to invert this logic. So back to WP query, and we are looking for get posts. Now this will return an array of WP posts or an array of integers. How are we going to do this, huh? What are we going to do? That is a lot of code. What the heck? Seems to me that this could all be refactored. Okay. I think I got it. So this is returning an array, right? An array of post objects or post IDs. So what we're checking for is that something is actually returned, correct? And that's because anything that is returned is going to be positive. It doesn't say, but I assume that this can return something other than an array. But, man. WP query get post return types. All right, so yep, array of post objects, but what is returned if nothing is found, right? That's what I want to know. Is it an empty array? Because if it's an empty array, then we can use count. If it's not an empty array, if it throws a WP error, then we'll have to do things differently. Right there. All right. Instead, an empty array is returned by the function. Perfect. So what we can do then is say if empty, not empty, if count, less than or equal to 0. And I know it's only going to be 0, but I'm always on alert for anything that is returning a 0, because sometimes things like to change, and if that ever changes to -1 as an error code, then I want to be able to account for that. Alright, so we'll return. So now we have our happy path, right? So we have, if this is a 404. Alright, let's just close all of our if statements. And we'll close this because it's a call, function. Right. So this is our if statements, or our happy path, I mean. Everything in here runs on every correct execution of this plugin. And that's the way it should be. You shouldn't have to guess for what you expect to run when your code is running. Or I shouldn't. If I'm reading your code, I should be able to know exactly what you want to happen based on the logic that you employ when creating your code. So here I know that I want more than 1, and we'll do less than or equal to there as well, because if post status ever breaks for some reason, I want that to fail, because otherwise it will throw an error, or you'll get things not on different post statuses returning the 410. Alright, so what does this code do? Well, if we're on a 404, then, or if we're not on a 404, then we're going to boot ourselves out of here. Nobody cares, we're not on a 404. Let's get out. Then we're going to pull in WP query. We're going to fill our default arguments, which, you know what? That's the other part. We're going to start looking at readability now, right? So this is our default arguments. Oh, lordy. Default args and default arguments. And that's going to return to our filtered arguments. Alright. Alright, so our filtered arguments will return this minus one or the other of these, right? Looking at this now, I don't know, I might leave it. I don't really care for ternary operations, but this is the case for it. If you're filling out an array with multiple options like this, this is the use case for a ternary. The other option is a more explicit, if empty, then what we'll say is if not empty, then so this would be the other way to do it, which I don't like that, I don't love that either, because now we're moving things behind the happy path, or outside of it. Because in a perfect world, the happy path will show us exactly what we want. So let's let's back out that change. And we'll keep this, but we'll try to clean it up a bit. If it's empty. All right. So what we can do here is say and say this way is more readable, but frankly it just looks ugly. I think in this case we'll revert the change, but I did want to show it because what it does is it allows you to see it almost like it's an if statement, right? Which essentially it is. We see our condition, our true, and our false, right? So it's our condition, our then, and our else. So we'll revert that. Okay. This seems fine to me. If we were going for a newer version of PHP, the null coalescing operator, right? So where is it? What version was that added in? Right, so that's right there. It was added in 7.0, I want to say. Yeah, 7.0. So, if I remember correctly, WordPress is still going to 5.6. All right. That's their recommendation. Where is their actual support? Yeah, so it works with 5.6. So we want to be able to be used by as many versions of WordPress as possible, as many different users as possible. Want to deal with as few issues as possible, right? So if we look at this, that's a sliver, but 5.6 is 11.9%. So that means essentially 12% of the WordPress population. And actually, it's even more than that. So it's like this entire chunk, which is almost a third, wouldn't be able to use this plugin if we went that route, right? The short array, this format here, that short array, that was added in, I believe, in 5.3. So there is some older than 5.3 there, but it's such a small number, I don't really care. I mean, if I break your stuff, maybe you should upgrade to something that wasn't end of life over 10 years ago. So yeah, let's see, where are we? Filtered arguments. We're gonna fix that. Yeah, I think that's it. Now, see here, I don't know if I love the exit, but I think the purpose here is that instead of loading the 404 template, it's going to load the 410 template and move on with its life. What I would like to do, and who knows, if this gets merged, we might come back and do this, but what I'd like to do is create a default template, something that pulls off of the 404, the default 404, and like can slide right in, and then add that in here. And instead of checking here, we use our template first, and if that template exists, then we use theirs. Otherwise, we would default to ours and not allow it to fail through to a 404 template. But yeah, so this is done. We're going to save that. And we can see here. Yeah. So we're going to stage that change. And it's the only change I'm going to stage, because this is the only thing I'm working on, is this. All right. Refactor plugin to move can I let's remove that. All right. Refactor plugin. There we go. What do we want to put here? Move away from static methods on the class to a function. Move core plugin logic to the happy path. And that's about all we did. I would say bump version number up by 0.001. Right? Well, if we're going to do that, let's take this. We'll copy that. Not sure if does that stay? Yes, it does. All right. So we will actually change this. 0.0.1 and .1. And now we will merge. We'll stage those as well. All right. So yeah, that's it. That's a basic refactor. If you have any questions, post it in the comments, and I'm going to commit that. Now, what we'll do, say get status. All right, that's where get checkout -b refactor plugin get push origin refactor plugin. And now that we have that, we can come over here. Compare and pull request. Check our changes. And we also ran what is it, grunt or I always forget. Which one is it? Yeah, it's grunt. Ran grunt to update readme.md because we did that as well earlier. All right. And create pull request. Boom. That's it. There's our files. If it gets merged, it gets merged. If not, you know, we did our part. We refactored it. We have the code. It's available if somebody else wants to look at it. I understand the idea behind keeping it, you know, a class, wanting to look at it as something to expand down the road. But if that's the case, down the road, we can always move it back to a class. You saw how quickly it was to do that. It was being treated as a function. There's a few ways that we could have handled that. I chose to just make it an actual function. We could have turned it into a callable, you know, but I believe callables are a 7, you know, version 7 class. So there we go. If you have any questions, like I said, leave a comment, like, subscribe. We're going to see what we can do more of these. If you want me to work on your plugin, leave a link in the comments and I will, you know, build a list of them and I'll start checking them out. Peace.